Today is an exciting day. We're going to continue to put the engine back together on this beast. Everything from this point on is totally new to me. I have never done any of this before, so I'm learning as I go. Let's finish putting our rods together so we can install them. So what I'm doing here is making sure that the rod caps fit properly on the end of the rods, that everything lines up and looks good, there's no binding or anything like that. Then I'm removing the old bearings, cleaning off the surfaces, and installing the new bearings into the rods. This is a slow, tedious process, and because I've never actually done this before, needless to say, I was exceptionally careful to make sure that everything went in the way that it seems like it should. It's not actually all that difficult, just takes a little bit of time. Once I get all the new bearings in, I go ahead and just use our assembly lube, put lots of it in there. Put these together so they're ready to go on the engine. All that's left is to put the pistons in the engine. I cannot believe it's time for these pistons to go back in. It's a pretty exciting moment. I go through and clean all of the crank surfaces where the rods are going to mount with the bearings. And then I generously lube all of the areas where the bearings are going to connect. And I flip the engine over and I'm going to go ahead and oil down the cylinder. Then we dump the oil on the floor. And since I'd never done this before, using one of these cylinder clamp cups to clamp the rings in so we can get them into the actual cylinder holes was a little bit more challenging than I expected it to be. It took 3 or 4 times, but basically what you do is you clamp it down so it is the same size as the hole in the block. And of course you have to do that with your cylinder inside of it. Then you lay it over top of the block. You use some sort of blunt object like a piece of wood or something, or dead blow, and you kind of tap it down into the cylinder holes in the block. It took a lot of fiddling to get that first one in. Once I did, we just roll the engine block over and we are going to connect that rod to our crank, tighten these bolts down and torque them up properly. Then we want to make sure we give the crank a good spin so that everything goes freely. And once we know that we have one installed, well, we just move on to the next one. And needless to say, these go a heck of a lot faster once you figure it out after you do the first one. And really the only trick here is to make sure that you torque the rod caps down to the proper torquage, and then you spin the crank after each piston goes in to make sure that everything spins freely and is working as it's supposed to. You also want to be sure that your pistons are facing in the proper direction. In this case, the pistons have a little arrow on them that show you which way they're supposed to be facing, towards the front or the back of the engine. The actual arrow faces towards the front of the engine, so I just have to make sure that they are facing in the proper direction. And really, there's not much to it other than that, and lots of assembly lube. Hard to believe I had no idea how to do this stuff. Or maybe it isn't. I'm sure veterans of engine building are able to point out all the kind of things that I did wrong. And I love your comments, so keep them coming. It seems like we're ready to put the heads on, but that's for the next one. Now you may ask yourself, why are we doing all this stuff on an old beater 733 that's not worth anything? And it could only be for the love of cars. And if this moron can figure it out, I know you can go out there and grab the one that you want to build and do it too. And I'll see you in the next one.